Hello, Jamie, and welcome to the DigiGov podcast. Today we have on Jamie Bykov Brett, an AI transformation strategist, TEDx speaker, Perplexity Institute fellow, and Gattaca top 200 innovator. Hello, Jamie. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me on. It's exciting to be here to talk to you and obviously go through all things AI, automation, and the future of work.
Definitely. Well, a pleasure to have you on. I'll start right away. I'll start with should an AI agent be able to tick T's and C's on your behalf?
Well, there's a great slide from an IBM presentation. I think it's in 1984. This slide was from, and it says a computer can never be held accountable, so therefore a computer should never make a management decision. And one of the things that I think we always have to think about when it comes to AI and automation is, where does accountability sit? Just because something can do it doesn't mean that it should do it. And that's what we're going to really have to balance up as we kind of move into the world that we're moving into, is how do you make sure that you have those humans in the loop? How do we make sure that AI is transparent? And you can see that with a lot of regulations that are coming through, like the EU AI Act and stuff at the moment, around the transparency of that decision, because that's where AI is different than any other technology we've had before, is it is capable of making a decision. That's what generative bits do. We're talking from going for something that's deterministic to probabilistic, it means that it can make a choice. But we want to be able to obviously make sure we have transparency and control over those choices as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly a grey area, and I thought I'd test you with our first opening question. But perhaps if we can move into like the sort of human factor in digital government, and you often mentioned that the digital revolution isn't just about the tech itself; it's often how people work together. How do we help move public sector professionals from just having an AI login to truly integrated it into their workflows?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going to the point of the digital revolution being more than just technology, in the same way that the industrial revolution was more about more than just technology. It was about updating our economic systems. It was around educating. The whole education system was around preparing people for the world that they were going into. And one of the challenges that we have at the moment is we have a changing economy. We have a digital economy. We're going through this digital revolution, and yet we're still preparing people like they're going into the industrialized world 50, 60 years ago. And the education that we're giving them is preparing them for a world that doesn't really exist. And that goes, it doesn't matter whether that is at the young person educational level, or you are somebody who is picking it up now for the first time and you've been in your career for 20 years. You are still going to have to learn the skills and the technology and the capabilities to be able to participate in that digital revolution. There won't be anyone who's not affected by it. I also think that sometimes we get really focused on the tools, and the challenges with that is, like, the tools, what's hot today is not going to be what's hot tomorrow. What they're capable of doing today is going to be different tomorrow. What you have to do is learn the mindset behind it. It's the human-centric skills that make these things work really well. So I always come back to, things like creativity, critical thinking, curiosity. Those are human-centric skills. They're really hard for machines to be able to replicate. We can't get them to replicate it at all. Those are the things that also, because if you're utilizing AI, it is an intent-driven platform. It basically is where you go, I want this, go do that. That clarity of thought is how you get the best out of those technologies. So for anyone who's picking it up, that's where I always start off, is develop the human-centric skills. Make sure you're good at your critical thinking, your curiosity. Then you'll get the best out of whatever tool you're utilizing. And that could be a whole suite of different things.
So would you say almost like if a government department's going over a massive digital overhaul, do you think those like focusing on empathy, collaboration, creativity, those elements are often more important than being able to actually adopt and use the technology itself?
Definitely. When I go into organizations at the moment, the first question people always ask me is, what tool should we use? And I go, it defies the point. When I've done the best programs that I've done, when we had a 9.7 out of 10 net promoter score, was where we didn't actually touch any AI tools for the first month and a half of their AI training. Okay, because it wasn't about the tools. If you learn how to utilize AI, you can utilize any tool, because the whole interface is the same. The whole point of AI is it stops you having to learn the software. A good example would be, okay, if you wanted to edit a photo in the past, you had to learn Photoshop and you had to learn all the sub menus of Photoshop, and then you had to do all the tweaks and changes in order to be able to go and do that.
Hmm.
So you adapted to the software. Now, what happens when it comes from an AI perspective, it's how good can you explain what you want it to be able to go and do? How clear can you make what you're trying to get from it? And therefore, you don't have to learn those softwares in the same way. So yeah, a lot of the best things that we can do is focus on those human centric skills in order to kind of get the better outcomes. A great use case for this as well is it sounds a bit corny, but it's a good case study. Is Alpha School in the States? It is a Texas-based school. They
Yes.
have the top 2% educational outcomes in the country, but they only spend 2 hours of traditional curriculum education every day. That's actually delivered by AI, so it adapts to the students, it changes that. That means that the rest of the time they actually focus on human centric skill development. It's your presentations, it's how do you do a meeting, how can you introduce yourself, how can you do your
Mm.
pitch, all of that kind of stuff. And that's the real value of being a human being. You know, let the machines do the machine work, you focus on being a better human being.
Yeah, definitely. It's I guess always on demand. Then if you want to dip into to learn certain bits of the curriculum, you can. It's always sort of there, and you can dive into whichever bit you want. So yeah, definitely a lot of value in that. You mentioned there you often sort of come in to consult at certain companies. What are the sort of common barriers that you end up seeing with AI adoption when you go into the company, and then also does that differ by sector or particularly within the organization? Does that differ by seniority? Do you find that the C-suite are often a bit hesitant, or are there any differences you see there that are worth picking
Probably
up?
the other way around, generally speaking, is the C-suite
Yeah.
are much more open to the adoption of it, even if they don't understand it. You kind of get with C-suite that it's a bit of a meme, and I think, but it is definitely applicable. Which is, what do we want? AI. When do we want it? AI. You know,
Yeah.
can we get?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we get this AI? And AI just becomes this magic bullet, and you're like, you have to kind of temper the
Mm,
C-suite expectations on it, and to be able to go, look, this isn't a magic bullet. If you automate a bad
yeah.
workflow, it just makes it a bad workflow done faster. And you have to kind of
Mm,
go back into the let's build out everything that people are doing. And then I tend to use a formula of being able to go automate, eliminate, delegate. Okay. Every task should have one of those titles. Is it a human being that needs to do it? Is it an AI that needs to do it? Is it something that we need to get rid of because it didn't serve a purpose anymore, or didn't to begin with, or doesn't anymore? Um, so, and does it differ by sector? There's definitely different barriers that you face organizationally to what kind of sector wants to be able to kind of take it up. Obviously, depending on the
mm,
regulations that are working on it. When I'm working with financial institutions, you know, you've got a lot more rigor, and obviously, understandably so, you're dealing with much more sensitive data. Whereas if you're talking more
yeah.
around the a lot of the L&D organizations I work with, they're a lot more pilot focused. They're like, let's go and give this a try, let's go and experiment. But then often are
Mm,
dealing with less sensitive information as well.
yeah, definitely. I think the public sector can be slightly risk averse, so um, there is that issue to deal with. And yeah, you mentioned already in this discussion you're a strong advocate for like a human centric approach to that innovation. What does that human centric approach look like when you're tackling digital service compared to, I guess, like a tech first approach?
Human centric approach to being able to do this is to understand that there's different ways that you can implement AI, right? You can look at low hanging fruit that people have, and you can go, okay, this is a repetitive task. It's something you could teach an intern to do. It involves
Hmm.
a lot of text. Those are things that are primed for AI tasks to be able to do it. So those are your low hanging. A human being was doing it before, but it's actually probably more machine work than it is anything else. But then the better part of that, and the where I think AI has a much greater value, is in augmenting human capability. Okay, so what can we do? What can we take that Pierce does at the moment and make sure that we are magnifying the output from it? So, for example, we could
Hmm.
go, you're doing this podcast at the moment. At the moment, you have to post it to, you have to edit it. Well, actually, that could be potentially the first draft edit could be done by an AI. Then when you post it, instead of you having to go through every individual channel and be able to promote it everywhere, you've got an automation that goes, right, I take it, I'm going to put it onto YouTube, Instagram, whatever it's going to be. And all of a sudden, you've taken your one action, your one input, and you've magnified it tenfold by building in the automation to be able to do that.
Hmm.
And that for me is where the human centric approach comes in, because we're going, what are you doing and how can we make it so it has a much wider reach and a much bigger impact, rather than going, oh, what tools do you need to be able to kind of do X, Y, and Z all of the time? And also being able to understand that the whole point of any revolution really is to, the human potential is still the most valuable resource that you can have. And we want to cultivate that. And that might mean changing the way that human beings show up. It might mean changing the way that work works. It might be changing how we value things from a digital economy perspective. I always think one of the greatest things that we can do in this era is start to invest in the care economy. Lots of unpaid labor, trillions of worth of labor is done every year, specifically looking after human beings. And we don't tend to reward those people. We don't tend to pay those people, but actually they are the backbone of society. And therefore we should go, you know what, we need to recognize that. That needs to be compensated for, because in a digital era, those are some of the things that you don't want a machine looking after your granddad. You want to be able to be there to be able to do so. So let's make sure that we reward that human-centric element of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely potentials for it to be fundamentally change the economy and the way we look at things, and like focusing, we can focus a lot more on the care, the human side, and that kind of brings me into my next question, I guess about productivity. Like the London School of Economics released a study last year saying employees who use AI are more likely to produce the same amount of work in much less time, potentially saving an entire workday per week through automating a number of things. Does that mean we're on the cusp of a historic global productivity surge?
I think that yes, we can be on the cusp of a global productivity surge while also being in the cost of a huge amount of economic downturn and difficulties that come with that. I think we're going into a world where the time taken to create something is so devoid from the cost of it, and therefore you can literally do things at what I would say the speed of thought. Okay, really good
Yeah.
example is, I know within my business, like, and I like to think this doesn't come from a place of ego, but I have 28 AI agents that run my small business, right? They work round the clock. They often do work in the early hours of the morning. Everything that I need comes to me before 9 o'clock from these AI agents that are all automated, that know what they're doing. Now, from that, I can go and get tasks out of the way much, much quicker. I can literally create things where I go, I need, 200 emails drafted within the next hour. I want these kind of clients. I want this kind of email. I want it all personalized to those individuals. And I could do that within a space of 15 minutes with an AI agent team going away and doing it and having been trained on being able to do that stuff. So yeah, productivity becomes yes, you can go and create these tasks very quickly and you can complete these things very quickly. The reverse side of that is it still needs to value you understanding what you're trying to do. You're just throwing AI at a problem doesn't fix that. And we also have a huge challenge of entry level roles. I don't think you'll see mass redundancies. What you'll end up seeing is a slowdown on the amount of roles that are there available in entry level roles. And if you try to change career or change sector, you're going to find that a lot harder because there's going to be fewer jobs available. So I don't think it'll be like a redundancy crisis per se, but it will be a challenge of traditional jobs showing up in the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I think those entry level positions are most at risk for sure. Like you mentioned earlier, if an intern can do it, then automate it, and then there's no position for an intern anymore, so it's difficult to start out fresh. So 100% agree with that. From what I've gathered so far, I think you're definitely optimistic about the future of AI. I've got another stat for you. A parliamentary briefing back in February found that 21% of UK adults, can explain AI any meaningful detail, which is quite small, and only 1 in 5 people feel confident using it. Now, I know you've written about this topic recently, and also know you've worked with young people getting them into STEM subjects. What's the real story behind the sort of the tech and the AI skills gap, and how should public sector leaders address it?
Yeah, I would say the AI skills gap, once again, it's a tricky one. I come back to it being human-centric skills. I think we've educated people out of the skills that they need to participate in the world that they're going into. If I was to look at the way we educate people and the way that we understand learning and measure intelligence at the moment, it's your ability to recite, regurgitate, and retain information. Well, an LM model can do that better than any human being can, and it's going to do it for a fraction of the cost of being able to do so. So essentially, we've educated people to behave like machines. In the industrial economy, people filled the gaps in machine capability. We go, a machine's not good enough to do that yet. Let's just turn that human being into a machine to be able to do that. The problem is we're moving into a world where those machines machine better than people do. So we have to come back to people better than machines. And for me, that is the gap that's there, is making sure that people have those skills that allow them to leverage the technology without the technology consuming them as part of it. And I think another part of that as well is once again making sure that we are understanding that the way that we work and the jobs that we do are going to need to change as well. I would go to anyone in any career, look at your team at the moment, look at all the job descriptions, look at anything's repetitive, involves a lot of text, teach an intern to be able to do. If you took all of those out of it and then put those job descriptions together, that's how many jobs are going to be left in that team in 10 years' time. Okay, because the rest of it will come into this automation bit. So yeah, I think there's a massive part of trying to educate people for the world that we're going into, and that AI skills gap really comes down to, redirecting it down to human ability and those human skills that allow you to use anything. As I said, if you can use one AI tool, you can utilize all of them. And I also just another bit as well. I realize I'm waffling a bit, but these
no, not at all.
I hope it's useful stuff. But we have to recognize that AI is a threat on a very human level to us. Okay, it fundamentally threatens our human needs. It fundamentally threatens our sustenance. Our ability to put food on the table, because that could be a job that's gone elsewhere. It threatens our sense of trust, our ability to believe in what is real, if we're getting the information correctly, if it's a deep fake, if it's not, if the information we've been provided for is real. Who made that decision? Our sense of trust in each other. Was this made by a machine? Was this made by a person? Does that make a difference? And all of these things are threats to us that no other digital tool has had. A spade doesn't dig without a human being behind it. An AI tool can do those bits. And that, for us, that unknown is why so many people are hesitant and concerned about it, because you don't know. And the regulation hasn't really caught up. The technology evolves faster than the institutions that are designed to regulate it are able to regulate it. So that's the challenge that people are coming into. So I understand people's fears and even sabotage of AI pilots and stuff like that, because there's a threat there and it needs to be addressed.
So, as a government leader, how do you design policies around AI when it changes so fast? Like within weeks, like OpenAI might release a model, then Google release a new Gemini, then Anthropic release a latest. Well, it's hard to keep up, and so how as a government leader would you look to manage that?
What's really interesting is, so I did my TED talk in 2015, which was how do you prepare a generation to take their place in the digital revolution, and it was all about how AI and automation will change the shape of the job market. And those predictions 10 years later were pretty spot on. But where I was getting that information from at the time, where I was learning from in that STEM role that I was in at that particular point, was government reports. I can even remember going on to BBC Bite Size, which was like, I don't know if they still have it, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. The children's BBC part, and it having a whole page on automation and what jobs would be at risk of automation and stuff like that. And then we sit here today and we act as if this was all a complete, but never going to happen, a fallacy. And I think the challenge that governments have is that you can't make long-term decisions based on short-term thinking. And when people come into parliament and when they come into government roles and all this kind of stuff, they're making decisions based on 4 or 5 year cycles of being able to do it. Whereas you need longer term policies to be able to work with the technologies we're talking about. If you've got a minister that changes over every couple of years, you can't build that longer term infrastructure to respond to that growing technological changes. So I think we're wrong to think that there isn't some degree of predictability to this, and that this is it was so hard to be able to map out. But what we do tend to do is people are reactive, they're not proactive. Until the pain is felt, nobody goes and does anything about it. And I think that's one of the challenges from a government point of view and from government decision makers, is how can you change it to stop being this is a pain point for us now, so we're going to act on it, to we need to think about what's our longer term infrastructure strategy to be able to do this. I mean, if you think about the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution, You had to build the schools, you
Mm.
had to build the curriculum, you had to build the systems to help people participate in that world. And that happened over the space of 50 years. And the countries that did better out of that were the ones who were able to adapt to a longer term strategy. And I think that's what China's doing very well at the moment, to be honest. When they're looking at their AI strategy, they have much more confidence in it. They have the people themselves have
Mm.
much more favorable attitudes towards AI because there's a longer term strategy in place. And I think
Yeah.
that's where the challenge for any government leader, really.
So do you think what do you think is our greatest bottleneck? Then do you think it's infrastructure, or is it the implementation?
I don't think either's great. uh, I would say if we're doing it might just be a whole bottleneck at the moment, and there's very little to solve.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the way that these systems operate, change is slow, right? And therefore, particularly if you're having to
Yeah.
change reactively, it's
Mm.
even more difficult to be able to do. And unfortunately, pretty much every government body at the moment has a legacy of failed change, and therefore, anyone who goes into those spaces doesn't think come into this with a fresh mind of going, it's going to be great, we're going to make it work. They go, I can see all of the mistakes that have been made over the last 15, 20 years, and
Yeah.
you're having to deal with the expectations, the understanding that people have around that. So it's really important to
Mm.
like highlight those quick wins, look at those pilots, get people on board. This is not just about implementing technology, this is a change management project. And therefore, you have to
Yeah.
consider the psychological process of change and transition in order to be able to
Yeah.
support people on that journey. Stop just looking at you, someone who's a SaaS provider who sells you a magic button and tells you it's going to fix
Mm.
all your problems, because we act like technology is a bit of pain relief at the moment. And as we were saying earlier, people
Yeah.
react to pain, so people sell to pain. And
Mm.
realistically, a lot of this technology that's coming through at the moment is just pain relief, and it
Yeah.
causes people to react. But that's not going to
Mm.
serve us in the long term.
Yeah, and this is exactly something that you work on currently. You would have seen as well. OpenAI launched it's their deployment company recently, and the exact aim of that is to go into to companies and sort of help them transition and then sort of build these AI models into their workflows, which is pretty much what you're all about. So in that sense, implementation is a problem that they've identified that they're trying to fix. Should government departments and local authorities be focusing less on building these custom models and more on training like an elite core of internal implementation engineers to help structure these workflows for them and build AI into the systems?
I mean, I think any consultant's secret is that the best ideas are always in house. Okay,
Mm.
the joys of a lot of what I do is when I work with organizations and we go in, I tend to go, I'm going to interview everybody. It doesn't matter what level they're at, and I can guarantee you the ones that are the ones that the organization loves the most that we come up with are always someone that entry levels come in and been like, I've thought about this. I've been doing this for a while, but nobody listens to me when I
Mm.
pitch it. And I go, okay, now let me put it in a bit of a wrapped up language to be able to sell this to your CEO. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden you go, oh my God, how do you think of that? And realistically, the best ideas are in house. You know your workflows. You understand the systems you're working on. You
Mm.
understand the culture that's there. What you don't understand is the technology. And that's where, the consultant's job is to really kind of pair those two things together, rather than trying to come up with all new innovative ideas of being able to do things, but instead just get the things that you're doing working.
Yeah.
So I do think there's definitely building internal capacity, and I say this as someone who comes in externally. Building internal capacity is fundamental to what you're trying to do here. Um,
Mm.
it's the I would always recommend pilots. We want to make sure that when you're doing
Yeah.
things, do it with a really small pilot team. We're going to test out a few different use cases. We're going to try out a few different technologies. You take it ideally away from sensitive data, but the whole point is you go, we're going to learn and we're going to share our successes and we're going to share our failures with the organization and we're going to share our learnings with
Mm.
the organization. And from that, small pilots building up, you build up the confidence within the organization and you learn how it works for you. OpenAI coming into your organization is not going to understand the nuances of your organization.
Mm.
They have a tool and they want you to spend more on the tool. What I want to be able to do is
Yeah.
go, I want you to make sure that you are utilizing the human beings that you have in your workplace to the best of your ability and to the best of their ability in order to make it a more functional, better working workplace.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that data sharing element is a huge piece of the puzzle. It's a problem that I know a lot of public sector organisations face. That they have very similar challenges in different government departments, but they're not necessarily speaking to each other, and they're working in silos, and they may be finding solutions to the same problems. And that's an issue that we try and break down at DigiGov and sort of bring everyone together at the show. If you're in charge, how do you think government departments should sort of better incentivize data sharing without compromising citizen privacy or security? How do you help that data sharing element?
I mean, there's lots of different types of data, right? If you're talking about pilots, you're talking about, lessons learned and stuff like that. There is data there, but it's not talking about sensitive data, and it's not talking about the sharing of your GDPR compliant, data that needs to be able to be there. I would always go that it's important to work with people who are experts within that data when you are utilizing anything that could be sensitive at all. And also look at the regulations of the AI technologies that you're utilizing to see that data compliance. This is more on an individual level, but I would go shadow AI, which is basically AI that hasn't been authorized in your organization, makes up probably the majority of AI use that actually happens in your organization at the moment. And if people are using free tiers and stuff like that, if I was to say OpenAI, for example, if you're using a free tier on ChatGPT, that's not GDPR compliant when people utilize those tools. It trains models, it stores in a way that isn't SOC 2 compliant and stuff like that. So what you really want to do is go, well, we need to have the in-house solutions to be good enough that people don't feel that they have to go and utilize other tools in order to get those results. They are going to, particularly in a world where these pressures are coming up all the time, there is that pressure for productivity. If they don't have that tool in-house, they're going to go elsewhere to get it. And no policy is going to get around that. So you have to make sure you're building it into your own systems. And as you're going through any of that sharing of information, sharing of data, obviously you want to put whoever has entrusted you with that data at the heart of everything that you do. You'll see much better results where people feel that they can trust those systems that they're going into. This is why Estonia's digital e-residency and digital ID system works so well, because they have such high trust in the government bodies that are looking after their data. If you look into the UK, we don't have that trust in our government bodies. We don't trust them with our data. We don't trust the systems that are working through. And it's not held in a sovereign way. A lot of these times they're shared with American corporations that, have got their own challenges of everything they're doing with it. So people don't want to hand over their data, and therefore it becomes a much bigger challenge to implement anything meaningful.
Yeah, definitely. I want to move across now, if I can, to bias in AI, and this has been and will continue to be a huge talking point, especially when automated systems can make decisions about sort of benefits, housing, or potentially even the criminal justice system. It has sort of massive effects. What are the critical steps for avoiding bias in AI systems?
So the best thing to think of AI is a mirror of society. Okay, it perpetuates societal norms and values. It is the whole way that AI works is it is the middle of the bell curve. Okay, so the way that it determines an answer for you is it goes based on your input. This is a statistically probable output. And that's why you get biases in it, because all of that data is based on human data. An experiment I always get people to go through is go into something like, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you might want to utilize, and go, give me a list of philosophers of the last 100 years, the best philosophers of the last 100 years. And I guarantee you the majority of that list will be white, middle class, Western, essentially kind of falling into, likely straight as well, falling all into the middle of the bell curve kind of bit, because there's lots of factors that has created that data, where people have been locked out of those systems, where people weren't able to publish or weren't able to contribute. And therefore within that system, it starts to go, well, this is the people that have the most amount of data on, so therefore I'm going to reflect that back at you. It only takes a small tweak to start to get better results from it. All you have to do is add in a diverse list, okay, of people of the last 100 years. And all of a sudden you've changed the model, you've changed the weights and biases in order to be able to get a much more diverse list as we go through. So I think it's really important to see AI as a mirror, and the data that you put into it cultivates what you get out from it. But you also have to recognize there's the risks of perpetuating the same societal norms and values over and over. If someone's a norm violator, someone's neurodivergent, if somebody doesn't fit into the mold in any particular kind of way that you might have had previously, they will still be a culture add to your organization. They'll still have perspectives that are definitely worth hearing. If anything, they might be
Mm.
more worth hearing because your middle of your bell curve you can get from your AI models. But you have to then
Yeah.
set up the systems in order to be able to have that participation from a range of different perspectives and viewpoints. I think that Ken Robinson, I might be paraphrasing what he said, but human societies depend on a diversity of intelligences, not just a singular conception of ability. Our whole challenge is to
Mm.
reconstitute that sense of ability and intelligence. And that's what I see as needing to happen in the digital age, is to be able to go, how do we reconstitute our sense of ability and intelligence? Because the intelligences that we might not have valued in the past are going to be the
Mm.
intelligence that we value in the future.
Yeah. So it's like that diversity of thought and diversity of experience as well to build in. So yeah, thanks for that. If Jamie, if you're appointed as a chief digital officer or even a chief AI officer at one of the major government departments on Monday, what was the very first change that you'd make?
Depends on the department. I think I would probably take everything two steps back from what they're trying to implement and start to think about the organizational culture that we are working with to be able to do it. As I said, this
Mm.
is a digital transformation project, not just an AI tool project. And I would want to be able to see what are the supports that we're putting in place for people, how are we educating people, also remembering that training is just one intervention on the change curve, right? Training is not the answer to everything. It happens at a
Yeah.
specific point on the change curve where you're trying to get people to adopt the new thing that you're working with. But actually, you have to deal with the fact that there's a whole other huge range of emotions people are going to go through: shock, denial, depression, all of these different aspects. And actually, training's not the solution in those places. You need to hear people. We need
Mm.
to get a good sound check on what's actually working in the organization. What are the, how do we help people to basically honor the past while also moving into the future? And sometimes when we come in with these technologies, the easiest thing to be able to do is to go, the past was rubbish. What we were doing before, crap. Let's cut it out.
Yeah.
Let's go and build
Yeah.
in our new future, and let's just talk about how great it's going to be in this bit. And actually, there's probably a lot of
Mm.
things that you need to honor within that space that you're moving on to in order to transition it into that new world. So I would probably start with that. I would also do a massive vendor check on who are we utilizing at the moment, who is processing that data, and I think as much as you
Mm.
can bring that into sovereign systems, making sure that it sits within your world and not on the purview of someone else's platform, the better you're going to find those implementations are going to be. So that would be the place that I would start.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking about tech and vendor tech, I guess, is there an emerging technology or tech trend that's on your radar right now that the public sector you think isn't paying enough attention to?
I think the cry for probably coming off the back of the last point, really. I think the cry of our of the people is to be have that data more sovereignly located. Have it on
Mm.
your own systems. Don't necessarily be going and sharing that your data with every vendor out there, because you're going to see people are irritated with that. They're concerned about it. We've seen how data is being misused, particularly in America at the moment, when you're looking at how small amounts of data on individuals might be utilized to persecute them further. And
Mm.
people, I think people want that to be able to sit not within big organizations, but sit within government bodies. And I get it. The infrastructure comes from elsewhere. It comes from these providers. It's hard to be able to build that up. But I think the more you can do so, the better you're going to be. France is doing some great stuff at the moment with going, we're going to transfer and move all of our government systems from Windows to Linux, because then we don't have to worry about the
Right.
licensing in the same way. We don't have to worry about the software companies and signing up to their terms and conditions of being able to do that. And it
Mm.
has huge favorable support within the country, because people want their data to be kept by their country. So I
Mm.
think that's a big one. And also open source models as well. You don't have to pay an arm and a leg for technology at the moment. And AI
Yeah.
models, there is a lot of open source alternatives that are free, that people can generally utilize to the same capability that they would do with lots of other frontier model systems. So I think it's always worth looking at going, do we have to pay for everything? Do we have to pay at the top dollar to be able to work with these frontier models? Or actually, a lot of the time, if you're building AI well, it's not just about having an interface, it's all the things that run in the background. And it's the seamless hidden parts that just get done because it's all part of a triggered automation to be able to do so. And you don't have to have the top tier models to be able to go and do that. What we'll find in the next few years is what is the frontier models now, you'll be able to run on a decent device within the space of a year to 18 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the frontier models are they're advancing so fast, and a good analogy I heard recently is an LLM is similar to a student that's read every book in the library, which will only get you so far. Whereas a lot of the companies now, like Google, a couple of weeks ago announced a worldview model, which will really change the game in terms of getting into that physical space with AI. How excited are you about the future?
I am a cautious optimist. I One of the things that I would always say is that I have a very techno-utopian version of the future and I have a very techno-dystopian version of the future. And a lot of that doesn't actually come down to the technology at all. It comes down to
The
the
people.
people. It comes down to, once again, that human-centric skill. Can we imagine a better future? Can we imagine different ways of being able to do things? If we fail within this upcoming era, it won't be because of the technology. It will be down to a failure of imagination, right? And our ability to change those attitudes, change behaviors in order to be able to accommodate for a growing technological capability. And for me, I think that's the really important part of bringing hope to what people are doing at the moment. Hope isn't the absence of fear being there. Hope is the idea of being able to go, do we have faith in ourselves about being able to do things better today than we were doing yesterday? And that's where I get my optimism from. And I always come back to, particularly when I started my career in youth work, working with some of the most marginalized young people into employment, education, and training, is if people take those opportunities, if you're able to provide meaningful support, then people do go on, they do go on and succeed, they do go on and kind of move the world forward. And that's what I'm always hopeful about, is I really believe in human potential. And I suppose that's the thing that keeps me going, really, is can we get there, and
Yeah.
can people have more faith in themselves to be able to make that happen?
Yeah. Well, it's inspiring. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired after listening to that. So, Jamie, to close out, if a digital listener is going to take one practical step on Monday morning to start building out AI in a team, let's say that they've assessed what needs to be automated, what's the next step? What should they do?
I mean, yeah, I suppose when we're assessing what needs to be automated, you want to go, identify what is a machine task and what is a human task, okay? If it's repetitive, regurgitating information, reciting information, give it to the machines. If it is something you're going, right, this is because we need that human oversight, we need that accountability, we need that critical thinking. If you can identify those differences between those tasks and try and stop the humans doing the machine tasks and try and stop the machines doing the human tasks, you will value the different types of intelligence that comes there. Because essentially, you're able to stream intelligence almost like you stream Netflix. And what I want you to think about moving forward is going, okay, well, now we can get those tasks done really quickly. How do we make sure we value the human-centric element of everything that we're doing? How do we leverage human capability and human potential rather than how do we just leverage the technology as well? It's a side-by-side conversation. It's not an either-or conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's been really valuable to hear. I think it's good to get a bit of a reality check, a check in mindset of like the human centric approach is often more valuable than just the tech. A lot of time you get bogged down in what's new, a shiny new tool, what you can do with the tool, and it's obviously super fast and easy to use. So yeah, it's good to hear that from you, Jamie. Well, yeah, all that's left to say is thanks for being here. Thanks for chatting to me. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. What can someone do if they want to keep up with the work you're doing? Like, where can we find you?
Yeah, sure. So my handles on everything is Jamie Bykov Brett, spelled BYKOVBRETT. So if anybody wants to follow along, I'm always trying to produce content out there to support people on that journey. And I'm also on bykov.net. So if anyone wants to contact, I've got a bunch of resources out there, a bunch of guides, all free for people to be able to access. So if they want to be able to kind of keep on track with that journey and to see the different approaches that are there and get some support being able to do so, then reach out and say hi.
Amazing. That's great. Thank you very much,
Thank
Jamie.
you so much. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.